Well, I'm back after taking a little break. I needed a break. In case you didn't know, the socialist pigs of YouTube, they're mad with me again. They're angry that I'm exposing all of their fucking religion. And I will continue to expose you. So go ahead, socialist pigs of YouTube. Find another reason on this channel to censor me. You will not find any YouTube music videos on this one, YouTube. We continue today with the Hitler Project, Part 5. Oh, there's a lot of it. There's a lot of it. Where did we leave off? Let me see. Please bear with me. There we go. Okay. I'm reading again. I am not the author. I'm reading out of Scarlet and the Beast. In case you don't know what it's about. A history of the war between English and French Freemasonry. You didn't know we were at war? You didn't know there was a war going on? It's been going on for a long time. Two powerful secret societies going after each other. Each one wanting to be king of the hill, the ruler. And guess who the victims are? You and me and all the poor souls that got caught up in these motherfuckers' wars through the years. The faces change, but the war continues. What do you think those Star Wars movies were talking about? The Jedi versus the Sith. You think it was just for your entertainment? George Lucas, he knows better. He knows better. All right. I turned off the internet, but I still see some sort of, lagging. Jesus Christ. Let me see what I can do here, if anything. Well, I'll have to do it over if I have to. So be it. Financing Hitler. Aristocrats and the intelligentsia. That means the intellectual. What we call here the nerds and the geeks. Hitler's rise to power would have been impossible without financial contributions from thousands of common folk. Yet, these givers pale in comparison to those who filled his coffers with millions of dollars, among them, and pay attention to this, because it happens here in the United States as well, artists and members of the intelligentsia. And you thought it was the politicians pulling the strings in D.C. Nope. Wrong again. So-called celebrities. That's right. The entertainment industry in fucking Hollywood. They pull the strings. And if they selected Trump for another 4 years, there's a reason for it. Everything happens in politics, happens by design. Musician Carl Klindworth, former friend of Freemason Richard Wagner, for instance, permitted his wife to finance Hitler. Richard Wagner's son also granted his wife, Winifred, permission to fund the mesmerizing Bachelor Führer. The Führer received most of his money, however, from the aristocracy and royalty of Germany, Austria, Britain. But I thought they were enemies during World War II. You better start thinking on a whole new level. You're playing checkers when the powers that be are playing chess. Czechoslovakia, what it was called before. Finland, the country I most want to be in. France, Italy, Holland, Hungary, Switzerland, and Sweden, many of whom had lost their titled position during the post-World War I Grand Orient revolutions. In exchange for their financial backing, Hitler led them to believe that he would restore their thrones. A few examples follow. Prince August Wilhelm, the son of Kaiser Wilhelm, 1859 through 1941, joined the Nazi Party. This first tentative step toward an alliance between Hitler and the Hohenzollerns was in hopes that Hitler would supply popular support for restoring the monarchy in exchange for money and contracts from the prince and the power elite. Yo, you don't know who the power elite are? You better find out. Prince Ratibor Corvey, one of the wealthiest nobles. They're always nobles, too. Behind the scenes, there's so many nobles. Of Silesia, was an early supporter of Hitler and rumored to be one of the best-paying members of the party. Many Silesian aristocrats. Let me try something here. Because this began when I opened this up. So maybe if I close it. Maybe now. Many Silesian aristocrats were pro-Nazis. Count Rex, and again, forgive me, I don't know German, Guy Schubel told his friends, times will improve for the landowners if Hitler comes to power. And besides, Hitler will restore the monarchy. Prince Waldeck Pyrmont, you see, I'm going through this. This is very important. You need to listen to this. Because when you watch the so-called documentaries, when you watch the movies about Hitler, when you read those so-called books that are telling you the truth, giving you facts, they never talk about the powers behind the throne, behind the scenes. They never talk about the motherfuckers who financed Hitler. The movers and shakers that were using or trying to use him and manipulate him to do things for them. I know for a fact that this bullshit still happens. Behind the scenes motherfuckers, just like in the Godfather poster, the hand moving the puppet. No one talks about these guys. And their families continue to exist. Their descendants are still in power today, causing the same goddamn problems. It's incredible. Prince Waldeck Pyrmont and heir to the throne of one of the small German states had been a member of the Freikorps after World War I. In the early 1930s, he became an SS officer. The Grand Duke of Hesse was also a regular contributor to the Nazi Party. Another of Hitler's early supporters was the Duke of Coburg. The Duke was English, but gave generously to the Nazi Party and was proud to wear his brown SA uniform in public. Oh, that reminds me. Remember a couple of years, no, more than a couple of years ago, remember when one of the princes thought it would be funny to dress up like a Nazi? Why would he do such a thing? Why would he dress up like an enemy of the English Empire? Because he is a Nazi, idiots! Unbelievable. Proud to wear his SA uniform in public, just like that prince. Another regular donor was the son-in-law of the Kaiser, the Duke of Brunswick. His son was a member of the SS. And you didn't know how many English were Nazis, did you? You better find out who funds Trump. You better find out, because I guarantee you it's the same bastards that funded Hitler, or at least their descendants. The Hohenzollerns supported Hitler in hopes his patriotic movement would restore their throne. Indeed, Hitler was very careful not to irritate them. He stated in 2 pamphlets published in 1929 and in 1932 respectively that he intended to establish a national socialist dictatorship for a transitory period. Hitler claimed he wanted to take over the state with the Nazi Party. And what does Nazi mean again? National Socialist. Only until the German people had been freed from the threat of Marxism. And what's the difference between Nazism and Marxism? Nothing. Name only. It's the same damn shit. And you intellectuals out there, chill the fuck out. Don't come at me with your comments talking about, oh, you're dumb. The differences are this, that, and the other. You're fucking stupid. And it's because people like you that these motherfuckers will continue being in power. Because you make excuses, you believe the lies, and you pretend to know everything. You don't know shit. That's why they get rid of you. The first people, when these motherfuckers come to power, the first people they get rid of is you, the intelligentsia. The motherfuckers who helped them get to power, the stupid peons. You're the first people they get rid of. Ain't that interesting? You must like to suffer. Goddamn intellectuals. And could then reach a decision as to whether the final form of government would be a republic or a monarchy. So you listening to this, and people actually bought it. Oh, yeah, I'm going to be a dictator for a couple of years, but don't worry. Only for a little while. And then we'll become a republic or a monarchy, But don't worry. Just, go along to get along. Do as I say. It won't be forever. And the idiots believed it. So solid was the aristocracy's support of Hitler that when the Kaiser's son, Prince August Wilhelm, joined the Nazi Party, he openly campaigned for Hitler. In 1930, the prince was Hermann Göring's travel companion. On a speaking tour in East Prussia and the Rhineland, the political marriage of these two forces in German political life occurred on July 9, 1931, when the Nazi Party united with the monarchist Nationalist Party. Of the powerful businessmen who financed Hitler, most famous is German industrialist Gustav Krupp. Think about it this way if you're kind of confused of what this is about. Remember Batman Returns? Remember Max Schreck, Christopher Walken? He was funding the Penguin and trying to get the Penguin to be mayor. Okay, think of Max Schreck as the industrialists and the Penguin is Hitler. Okay, that's what the movie's really talking about right there. If you want to know what the movie's talking about, it's talking about the rise of socialism, fascism, communism, Zionism, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Different names, same shit. So just imagine it that way. German industrialist Gustav Krupp, 1906 through 67. Karl Dunsberg, founder of IG Farben, the great chemical trust that manufactured the poisonous gas to kill the Jews, financed Hitler. Other contributors were Fritz Thyssen, 1873 to 1951, multi-millionaire industrialist, chairman of the board of Germany's largest firm, the United Steelworks, Ernst Tingelmann, wealthy director of an important Ruhr coal mining company, and Dr. Hjalmar Schacht, 1877 through 1970, most prominent banker in Germany and generally regarded as the country's financial wizard. The Versailles Treaty had given cause to harden these businessmen and bankers in their nationalist resolve. The treaty, for example, was responsible for the destruction of the Krupp firm property worth over 104 million gold marks. Faced with such vicious restrictions that prevented Germany from entering and competing in world markets, it is little wonder most German business and financial leaders backed Hitler. And I repeat, you better go do some research, some digging. I'm sorry. I'm living in an area that's become a hell with noise. Everybody's looking for attention with their noisy motorcycles and noisy cars. It's fucking ridiculous. You better find out who the people are funding Trump. And I don't care if they're Jew. I don't care if they're fake Jew. I don't care if they German. I don't care if they black. I don't care if they white. Find out. Standard Oil and Hitler. Rockefellers. Oh, the Rockefellers. And I'm not talking about a pizza place. That's a little joke. There's a pizza place called Rockefellers where I live. Rockefeller's Standard Oil Company of New Jersey. Oh! You didn't know that my state of New Jersey was involved in this? You better ask somebody. Why did the Hindenburg come to New Jersey? Why did it blow up in New Jersey? Oh, you better ask somebody. Largest petroleum corporation in the world, invested heavily in rebuilding Germany after World War I. CEO of Standard Oil was Walter C. Teagle. Charles Higham, in Trading with the Enemy, informs us that from the 1920s on, Teagle showed a marked admiration for Germany's enterprise in overcoming the destructive terms of the Versailles Treaty. To assist the Germans, Teagle had imported standard tanks and tank cars and dispersed them throughout Germany. He also established a friendship with Hermann Schmidt, CEO of IG Farben, the German chemical company founded by Karl Duisberg. By the time the Nazis came to power, Teagle was director of American IG Chemical Corp, a subsidiary of IG Farben. Teagle made sure that Standard invested heavily in American IG, and that American IG invested heavily in Standard. Anxious that Standard protect its interests in Nazi Germany, Teagle made many visits during the 1930s to Berlin and to the Standard tanks and tank cars throughout Germany. In addition, prior to World War II, Standard sold fuel to the German Air Force, then built a refinery in Hamburg that produced 15,000 tons of aviation gasoline for Göring every week. The refinery continued operation throughout the war. Prior to the war, Standard oil tankers staffed with Nazi crews fueled German U-boats. From 1939 until Pearl Harbor, Standard Oil also furnished Hitler artificial rubber. Just before Hitler conquered Holland, Rockefellers, Standard Oil, agreed with Standard Oil of Holland to stay in business together, even if America entered the war against Germany. Royal Dutch Shell of Holland also cooperated with Standard Oil. After the Nazis invaded Holland, cooperation continued as agreed. The CEOs of these companies felt their motives were patriotic. Each agreed that Hitler should destroy the Soviet Union and hoped that he would. In 1943, the Petroleum Times, an American trade journal for the petroleum industry, confirmed that relationship between Rockefeller's Standard Oil and IG Farben was still in force as of that date. IG Farben confirmed the accusation with a report that in part stated the innumerable benefits that Germany had obtained from her American friends, including the use of tetraethyl, without which the war effort would have been impossible, had been approved by the U.S. War Department. Are you beginning to understand? Are you beginning to realize that you're nothing but cattle? These wars are by design. Can you fucking understand this? As we know, the U.S. War Department was then dominated by the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR. At the head of the CFR was David Rockefeller, 1950 through the 1990s. The IG report also revealed that during the war, Rockefeller's Standard Oil Company sold $20 million worth of petroleum products, including airplane benzene, to IG Farben. And I'm going to take a water break. Okay. I continue. Prince Bernhard, founder of the Bilderbergers, 33rd Grand Lodge Mason Prince Bernhard, 1911 through 2004, of the Netherlands, a German-born prince and major stockholder in Royal Dutch Shell, also backed Hitler. After Hitler conquered Holland, Bernhard renounced Freemasonry and became an SS officer. After the war, he returned to the Brotherhood. Or maybe he never actually left. That's coming from me, that part. And was, until his death, a High Mason in the Hague Grand Lodge. In 1954, Prince Bernhard hosted for the members of the British Round Table a super secret meeting at the Bilderberg Hotel in Oosterbeek, Holland. When journalists heard of the gathering, but could not discover the name of the hush-hush group, they labeled the attendees the Bilderbergers. The Bilderbergers have since met at least once a year. As we have learned in Chapter 17, Bernhard was, until his death, one of the Masonic Supreme Council Inspector Generals who frequents many neo-Nazi, New Age movement gatherings. Masonic King of England. Edward VIII, 1894 through 1972, was crowned both King and Grand Master of English Freemasonry on January 20th, 1936. Edward, however, married a divorced commoner from the United States and was forced to abdicate 11 months later on December 10th. His younger brother ascended the throne the next day and downgraded Edward's title to the Duke of Windsor. In July 1940, the Duke assumed the governorship of the Bahamas. Edward VIII not only supported Hitler, he did so loudly. From the time of Hitler's rise to power, the Windsors were fascinated by the Führer and his new order in Europe. Speaking in Masonic terms, the king expressed the views of the Brotherhood concerning Hitler. "Whatever happens," he said, "whatever the outcome, a new order is going to come into the world. It will be buttressed with police power." Now you understand what's going on with police brutality? Even with the goddamn cameras on, they don't give a two shits if they kill you. They have the license to kill. You thought that camera on them was going to help you out? No! And whenever they want to shut off the volume, the audio, they can. So you don't even fucking know what they're fucking saying. Good for nothing cameras. When peace comes this time, there is going to be a new order of social justice. Socialismo. It cannot be another Versailles. During his short reign, King Edward VIII made every effort to promote Nazism, National Socialism. As a result, some of the most prominent aristocrats in England joined the Nazi Party. And now we're getting into the nitty gritty. I love connecting the dots for all you naysayers and idiots who think this is foreign shit, European shit only. Now you're beginning to understand. That it's more than that. The connections. Henry Ford, 1863 through 1947, was raised a master mason in Palestine Lodge, number 357, Detroit, Michigan, on November 28th. And yes, Palestine Lodge, you heard correctly. November 28th, 1894, he continued a staunch member of this lodge for almost 53 years, attaining the honorary 33 degree. Everything Ford did for the Nazi movement appears to have furthered the goals of English Freemasonry. For example, in 1920, when the Protocols of Sion with an S were being published everywhere, Ford apparently became frightened by the Russian Revolution and the rapid spread of communism throughout the world. He believed the anti-Semitic claims that Jewish capitalists and Jewish communists were partners conspiring to gain control over the nations of the world through communism. But as I've told you already on numerous occasions, it's all the same shit. Different names, same shit. Socialism is socialism. To expose the so-called conspiracy of the Jews, Ford bought a country newspaper in Michigan called the Dearborn Independent and turned it into a conspiracy digest against the Jews. Dearborn Independent seriously charged that several well-known Jews in America were the instigators of World War I. One was Bernard M. Baruch, 1870 through 1965, a 33rd degree Mason, known as the Proconsul of Judah in America. A Jew of superpower. When requested by news reporters to comment on Ford's charges, Baruch replied tongue-in-cheek, "Now, boys, you wouldn't expect me to deny them, would you?" And let me take another breakage for a second. I'll be right back. Okay. Where did I leave off? Yes, Brock replied tongue-in-cheek, "Now, boys, you wouldn't expect me to deny them, would you?" Entering the fray was 33rd degree Jewish Mason Colonel Edward M. House, 1858 through 1938, who urged President Woodrow Wilson, 1856 through 1924, to act against Ford. When Wilson called upon Ford to stop his vicious propaganda, Ford refused. You got to remember, though, this is all a show. They're all brothers in the brotherhood. This is all a show. In 1922, Ford's articles were compiled in a book entitled The International Jew. Translated into German, the book was renamed The Eternal Jew. This book led many Germans to become Nazis. Finally, Ford struck at the Jews where they would later prove to be most vulnerable. He financed Hitler. His first contribution was 40,000 then was $40,000, then $300,000. Ford's funds continued to flow to Hitler until World War II broke out in 1939. 1 year later, in September 1940, Ford received the 33rd degree in a New Jersey lodge, New Jersey, in the northern jurisdiction of Scottish Rite Freemasonry, which is under the English Masonic obedience. Why should the British-controlled northern jurisdiction of Freemasonry honor Ford with the 33rd degree after he financed the Nazis? Unless it was to reward him for furthering the Masonic conspiracy against the Jews. Bank for International Settlements. A prominent bank, Bank for International Settlements, BIS, also played a murky but definite role in financing Hitler. Dr. Quigley informs us that the BIS, founded in 1930 in Basel, Switzerland, was a private bank owned and controlled by the world's central banks, which were themselves private corporations. This system was to be controlled in a feudalistic fashion by central banks of the world acting in concert by secret agreements arrived at in frequent private meetings and conferences. Encyclopedia Britannica agrees with Quigley, but adds that the BIS was an international bank established at Basel, Switzerland in 1930 as the agency to handle the payment of reparations by Germany after World War I. And as we know, war reparations were demanded from Germany in June 1919 by the Versailles Treaty. We should note the gap of years between the treaty and the founding of BIS. Would it not be ludicrous to establish a collection agency for war reparations 10 years after the agreement which set terms? And 1 year following the world's worst financial crash? In 1929, Germany had no funds with which to pay reparations. Furthermore, in 1931, 1 year after the BIS was founded, all European powers except France had ended reparations demands. 2 years later, Hitler repudiated all reparations. If not to collect reparations, what actually was the function of the BIS? Recent information uncovered by British historian Charles Higham and published in his book Trading with the Enemy, 1983, states that the BIS was to be a money funnel for American and British funds to flow into Hitler's coffers and to help Hitler build up his war machine. BIS was completely under Hitler's control by the outbreak of World War II. Higham says its continuing existence was approved by Great Britain even after that country went to war with Germany. For example, on the BIS board was the eccentric Montagu Norman, CEO of the Bank of England and a rabid supporter of Hitler. The major stockholder in the Bank of England was the House of Rothschild, which controlled finances for the Round Table groups such as the Council on Foreign Relations, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, and the Institute of Pacific relations. Many individuals who were associated with the with the BIS and named by Higham are known Masons and or members of the Round Table groups, although he does not mention this fact. According to Higham, Hjalmar Schacht, Hitler's Minister of Economics and President of the Reichsbank, was a closet English Freemason who urged English bankers to establish the BIS to fund Hitler's war. It was written into the bank's charter, concurred in by their respective governments, that the BIS should be immune from seizure, closure, or censure, whether or not its owners were at war. These owners included the Morgan-affiliated First National Bank of New York, the Bank of England, the Reichsbank, the Bank of Italy, the Bank of France, and other central banks. To take the heat off London, a rumor circulated that the idea for establishing an international bank was the brainchild of an American in America. It was called the Young Plan, after the American lawyer and Freemason Owen D. Young, 1874 through 1962. Young, in reality, was the front agent for J.P. Morgan of the CFR. Moreover, the president of the BIS was Thomas H. McKittrick, also an associate of the Morgans. What motivated English Masonic bankers to build up Hitler's military and armaments? Such a project could only endanger the world, for English Freemasonry was well aware of Hitler's hatred of communism. Support of Nazi Germany's war machine would mean war between Germany and Russia. Such a conflict could trigger another world war. Why did these British bankers take such suicidal action? And now I ask you, why does the left, the so-called liberals, so-called Democrats, who are now beginning to call themselves what they are, social democrats, why do they want a war with Russia so bad? My personal opinion is we're going to get dragged into a war with Russia regardless, whoever the president is. Because it's the plan. There must be war. And it's the same bastards. Different ones, descendants of the ones from World War II and World War I. But their children and their children's children and their children's children's children are the motherfuckers who want to get us into a third world war. The same families, same bastards, same goddamn secret societies. According to Higham, the BIS financed Hitler as a means to another end, to sweep and garner the gold of Europe for the benefit of what Higham calls the fraternity. The fraternity, as we have seen, is just another name for Freemasonry. In the next chapter, we will document the greatest gold heist in history, as Hitler conquered nation after nation, shipping their gold reserves to the bank for international settlements. No, that's not how it happened. That's not what happened. Monuments, the movie Monuments, man. You better wake up. They will build something up just to destroy it. Until you understand that, until you can comprehend that, you will never, ever think on their level, and you definitely will never be able to beat them. They think on another level. This is coming from me now. I guarantee you that when they were building the World Trade Center, they already knew, and I mean they, the powers that be, back then, they already knew it was going to be destroyed. Not prophecy, not vision. I'm talking they build it on purpose for at some later point it could be destroyed. They're killers! They're psychopathic, and they don't give a fuck about you or your families. Hitler becomes dictator of Germania. In 1932, Germany was paralyzed by political stalemate. The monarchists, although long relegated to political insignificance, saw in the crisis a chance to gain power. The monarchists' newspaper, Süddeutsche Monatschrift, stated their view that only monarchism could solve the existing political crisis. The ex-Kaiser also recognized opportunity in the crisis, understanding it as his chance to return. Rear Admiral von Eschenberg promised the Kaiser the cooperation of the Navy, but to avoid civil war, the army would also have to cooperate. It was loyal to Hitler, and Hitler demanded an important concession from the Kaiser. Hitler wanted to be Chancellor. Fritz Thyssen, 1873 through 1951, a loyal monarchist, was convinced Hitler would take office as Chancellor merely as a transitional stage leading to the reintroduction of the German monarchy. Thyssen invited a number of the aristocracy to his house to put the question to Hitler. Hitler answered in distinct and unambiguous terms that he was merely the peacemaker of the monarchy. Now we all know how that ended up. Hitler was finally given the chancellery in January 1933, but not without many bribes and blackmail from both sides. Hitler, of course, never intended to return the government to the monarchy. He would not abandon his pact with Stalin, which he made in 1909 in the Habsburg Museum to possess the Spear of Longinus, Spear of Destiny. Possession of the spear, he believed, would enable him to crush the Judeo-Masonic conspiracy and to rule the world himself. If I rule the world. Okay. In 1934, Hitler merged the chancellery and presidency, becoming Führer and virtual dictator. He then moved against the Judeo-Masonic conspiracy. Hermann Göring, 1893 through 1946, acting on Hitler's orders, dissolved all lodges, including those purported to be Christian. Göring also dissolved the Thule Society, Volksche Beobachter, the Nazi newspaper, August 9th, 1935, announced the final dissolution of all Masonic lodges in Germany. The paper blamed the lodge for the assassination at Sarajevo, which precipitated World War I, saying that Freemasonry believed the time had come for a bloody war between nations and the erection of a world republic. Also in 1935, Hitler struck his first blow at the Jewish people with his infamous racial laws, called the Nuremberg Laws. Hitler and the Cliveden Set. After the Bolshevik Revolution and the rise of Stalin in the Kremlin, English Masonry's roundtable groups had calculated that an eventual war with Russia was inevitable. When Hitler came to power, he demanded that England return the colonies taken from Germany after World War I. The think tanks of English Freemasonry were convinced that unless Hitler were appeased, he would declare war against Great Britain. London preferred that Hitler turn his eyes to the fertile Ukraine. Oh, and you thought everything going on in Ukraine is just recent shit. Ukraine existed back then? Yes, it did. It played a part back then, and it's playing a part now. Fertile Ukrainian wheat fields of the Soviet Union and attack Russia. If the USSR won, England and her economic royalists would face only communism. If Germany won, the Nazis, National Socialists, having expanded their territories eastward, would be exhausted by war and could make no demands on England. London's role was to strengthen Germany in her preparations for the coming war with Russia, to be funded through the BIS, and at the same time prepare the British psychologically to fight if these geopolitical calculations were askew. How all this was to be accomplished was left up to the Round Table think tanks, specifically the Royal Institute of International Affairs, RIIA. Beginning in the fall of 1937, the RIIA went into session for 9 months. Dr. Quigley informs us that the RIIA was sometimes spoken of as the Cliveden Set, named after the Astor Country House in England, where they sometimes assembled. The Astors were the financial backers of the RIIA, and their son William Astor, its chairman. American and British Astors were related, their lineage dating back to our Revolutionary War. Oh, shit! Listen to this. Pay attention. Pay attention, and now you'll understand why they want a civil war in this country. That was always their plan. They need civil war. They want it back. American and British Astors are related, their lineage dating back to our Revolutionary War. No, the Civil War was between the Confederates and the States. Well, Revolutionary War. Anyway, Revolutionary War. They want it back. They want it. John Jacob Astor, 1763 through 1848, a German-born American, was a wealthy fur trader, capitalist, and Grand Master of the New York Masonic Lodge. The British clan, also Masons, bought their way into the British aristocracy during the 1930s. They owned 5 seats in Parliament and controlled 2 of the most powerful and influential newspapers in the world, the London Times and the London Observer. In addition, their financial interests stretched into banking, railroads, and life insurance. I hate when these pages stick together. Okay. All right. It's a lot of it, but I'm going to stop right here. Oh boy. They need a civil war so they can take back everything they lost in the Revolutionary War. These people say they're the Jews. Study, find out British Israelism. Find out what British Israelism is. Research it. Find out. These are fake, phony, fraudulent Jews. And it doesn't matter what country they come from. They can come from Eastern Europe. They can be Russian Jews. They can be English motherfuckers. They're all in cahoots. Kabbalah and Gnosticism. They're all in cahoots. All right. How do we... Let me see where I can... Let me go to Musica here. Classical. Here we go. Play some music here. An outro. Join me tomorrow for part 6 of the Hitler Project. Gotta get myself one of those conducting sticks.